as we look at this case and as it gets underway, Google, for its part, seems to be arguing that people come to its product that it's the best because it's the best. And the Department of Justice seems to be saying, well, but you made it the best because you funneled everybody to come to you through means that you shouldn't have used. How, as an observer of this case, how are you sort of weighing the two sides here?
Sure. Well, the first part of the case is that the Department of Justice has to prove that Google has a monopoly in what they call general search and search advertising. And Google will contest that, but that's not really the heart of the case. And frankly, Google could lose on that point and still go on to win the case. The heart of the case is really about Google's deals with Apple, with Mozilla, and with phone manufacturers to have Google search be the default search on browsers and devices. And I think that in some ways, these deals are a little bit like grocery store shelving deals, right? So if you walk into Safeway and then you go into the cookie aisle, you see that Oreo has a lot of products on the cookie aisle. That's because Oreo, Mondelez, has paid Safeway for that shelf space. But it doesn't preclude Hydrox or Chips Ahoy from also being on that shelf space as well. And in fact, if you look at Apple and Mozilla, they also do deals with other search engines like Bing and DuckDuckGo and Yahoo, not to be the default, but to be among the other choices. And so that, I think that's going to come to play as the trial proceeds. Are these like promotional deals that we've seen in other spaces like grocery stores?
Adam, we should point out that you did formerly work at Google. And so obviously, you're very well versed in the arguments on the Google side. I'm curious how you think, away from this case, this is likely to change the way Google does business. We were talking earlier today about how things changed for Microsoft. That ended in a settlement, but there was an argument to be made that the trial was the remedy, right, from the government side of things. Can you argue that in many ways DOJ in this case can make its point without necessarily winning because of the pressure that will be very publicly displayed on Google?
Well, I think the reality is that, 1998, when the Microsoft case was brought involving Netscape, was eons ago in terms of technology. And a lot of the issues in that case really had to do with things like how hard it was to switch to a competing web browser from Netscape, to a competing web browser like Netscape. And it's much easier to switch to a competing search engine today. So I don't know. I don't think this case has that much to do with where things go in the future, particularly because if you look at the last year, arguably the most significant thing that's happened in terms of search has been generative AI, and particularly the rise of ChatGPT. And make no doubt about it, ChatGPT is a competitor to Google. And if ChatGPT is really good, it actually gives Google a search a run for its money. Google knows this. They've responded. They're competing. That's what we want to see. But I think in some ways, that competition that's been spurred by ChatGPT undercuts the DOJ's case a little bit because ChatGPT didn't have any default search deals, and yet it's giving Google a run for its money. And I think that's good. That competition leads to more innovation for consumers. I don't think there's any absence of that at all.
I think on an anecdotal basis, maybe it's giving it for a run for its money. But if you look at the latest numbers, I don't know that the market share has actually budged that much, which maybe gives credence to the idea that these are entrenched relationships. I mean, I have to wonder, part of the crux of the DOJ's case seems to be the financial relationship between Google and those who are carrying its search engine. What if Google stopped paying them? What if there wasn't that financial relationship? What if they just, what if indeed they just rose to the top merely only on the basis of what search is good and what isn't?
Well, it's very interesting because this stage of the case is not about remedies. It's just about the Department of Justice proving its case. But if the Department of Justice wins, there will be a second phase that's about remedies. But I think your question is a great one, because let's say, for example, that they found that Google shouldn't be paying Apple or Mozilla for these deals, right? So then Apple and Mozilla still want to do those deals, but who's left to do them with? Well, that's Bing, right? And I think you'd see two things happen. One, Bing as the only bidder for those deals would make the price they would pay to Mozilla and Apple actually go down. Interestingly enough, this is how Mozilla earns most of its money. And so I actually think in some ways the biggest potential loser from a DOJ win in this case would be Mozilla more than anyone else. But some significant portion of consumers are still going to choose the highest quality search engine regardless of the default. And I think that were Google not to be the default, all evidence suggests that a lot of people would switch back to it. In fact, Yahoo had done a deal several years ago on the search side to replace Google as their default and move, or Mozilla had done a deal to replace Google with Yahoo. Yahoo's search didn't monetize as well, didn't perform as well, and Mozilla went back to Google, in part because their users also did, right? So I think that do defaults matter? Yes, they clearly matter for something, but are they the driver? No, I think at the end of the day, it's quality of the search engine that's driving consumer preferences.